cover the Sixers. PhillyBurbs.com is where you can read more of Tom's stuff. And, of course, right now on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Tom, have you, to your recollection, has there been a game with more lopsided records than this one we're about to see Saturday night?
I mean, I can't imagine, Mike, this late in the season, more than the halfway point, where you have a team that's 42-4 and a team that's 7-39, I guess it is. Yeah, you're right. That's an incredible disparity, to say the least.
Sure is. And Tom, this team has played better, no doubt about it, since the Ish Smith trade. They're almost a 500 team. Down the stretch here, you just mentioned they're a little bit about the halfway point here. What is some of the goals for this team moving forward? They're starting to eerily get close to that Laker team, and, some people are a little worried about that. But what do you think this team wants to see moving forward?
Well, I believe Brett Brown would like some continuity. The last 2 years, at the trade deadline this year, the deadline's February 18, so it's about 2.5 weeks away, almost 3 weeks away. 2 years ago, they traded Evan Turner and Spencer Hawes and LaVoy Allen at the deadline, and last year they were 4-4 going into the All-Star break, and the deadline was over the break, and they traded Carter Williams, who had been the Rookie of the Year, and KJ McDaniels, and kind of almost had to start over for the last 2 months of the season. So I know from a coaching perspective, he'd like to see none of their major guys necessarily traded, so they can kind of keep, developing and working with this group, as opposed to starting over or trading a key piece for another key piece. The previous 2 years, they really didn't get any key pieces back. They just got future draft picks and a marginal player or two, that type of thing, or guys that they waived to acquire first round picks. So I know from his perspective, Ish Smith clearly has helped because he runs and he makes them run with him, because they're still not a very good half-court team. So the more, transition opportunity and fast breaks they get, the better it is for them, offensively. I think still Brett Brown wants to try to figure out, which he hasn't been able to. I don't know if he will be able to, how to make it work with Okafor and Noel, who are really natural centers and who play best without each other on the court, because, Okafor, Noel doesn't get shots at the rim when he plays the four. And defensively, he doesn't get as many block shots and rebounds because he's chasing, the Kevin Loves and Rudy Gays and, guys like that out on the perimeter. So there are definitely some things I'd like to see, if they can resolve, and, how well they can do, and, progression, not necessarily in terms of wins and losses, but being more competitive, those types of things, Mike.
Tom Moore, Sixers beat writer for Calkins Media. He's at T-Moore 76ers. Yeah, and, these reports that Porzingis wouldn't meet with the Sixers, and his agent basically did everything he could. No meeting, no physical, no workout. I guess the question would be, did that scare the Sixers away, and do you think Porzingis is a better fit than Okafor, knowing what we now know?
Here's the thing. I understand why Sam Hinkie took Okafor, because, and I asked him this question the day after the draft, would you have taken Okafor if Embiid were healthy? And his answer was, I hope so. I would like to think so, but I'm not sure. So he's not sure if he's replacing Embiid or getting someone to possibly play alongside, behind, whatever. So given the uncertainty over Embiid and the fact that Okafor kind of fell in their laps, most people thought Okafor would go 2 to the Lakers and the Sixers would get Russell. Now the other hand is, if they're lucky enough that this time next year Embiid's healthy and playing 25, 30 minutes a game, Porzingis, to me, is the ideal complement to him, because he's a stretch four. He can play on the perimeter. He can play inside. He can handle a little bit. He's athletic. He can run with the fours on the other team and so on. But to be fair, Hinkie was in a tough spot because he didn't know, and they still don't know. I mean, last year this time, they thought Embiid would be able to play in the summer league, and he had another setback and then a second setback, and then he needed another surgery. So they really don't know, what's happening. So it's a tough call. I mean, I would have liked to have seen it. If Russell and Porzingis were there, I think they would have taken Russell at the time. Now, if you went back and redrafted, I think Porzingis would go number 2 to the Lakers, and then I'd be curious who the Sixers would take between Russell and Okafor at 3. I think it probably would have been Russell.
Yeah, no, that would have been really interesting. Yeah, because it seemed like if the Sixers, because of the situation that they're in, went Porzingis, that probably would not have been a popular pick regardless. Not that they care about that based on what they've done over the last 3 years, but that couldn't have been a very popular pick from many people. But as you said, he may have turned out to be the second best player. I don't know if he's a better player than Okafor, but he might just be a better fit maybe because, as you mentioned,
I would say he's a better all-around player, and he's more athletic. Like he certainly isn't a low-post player. Okafor is, but he's got a really he does a little bit of everything. He can shoot from the outside, he can shoot inside using both hands, rebound dunks. He's a pretty good defender. He's a decent defender. But don't forget, I mean, the Knicks fans booed him when they took him too. I was in Brooklyn with all the booing and so on when that happened, and now they love him. I mean, they like him way more when you go to games. I mean, they like him more than they like Anthony. So I mean, you just don't know. I mean, the guy's 7'3", legitimately.
Yeah.
And he's not a low post guy. He can play inside, outside, whatever you need. So you're right. It wouldn't have been popular short term, but if he played there like he's played, if he played here like he's played in New York, I think they really would like him.
Yeah, and you wonder, as we continue to watch this, and Okafor hasn't played the last 2 nights. I mean, Noel clearly seems more comfortable playing in the center and playing without Okafor. If it comes down to it, which of these two guys fits better with Embiid? Can the Sixers think in that manner, or do they have to get to the point where all three of them play together and then make their decision?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mike. It's something I think that they're pondering right now. I mean, if they figure out, all right, well, they decide Okafor and Noel just can't play together. Well, the only way you make a move by the February 18 deadline, to me, is if you got to get something you really want in return. Because otherwise, you still don't know, and you may not know in November of next year if Embiid's coming back or playing spot minutes or getting to the point where he's ready to play or whatever. It may take you to the trade deadline next year. It might be a full year until you know that. So I guess it depends whether they believe that it can work with those other two. And then, to me, offensively, Okafor probably works better with Embiid because Embiid can go out. He's got a really nice stroke from 18, 19 feet, inside, outside. That way, Okafor can play down low. But defensively, I don't know if you want Embiid out there chasing the power forwards at the other end. Noel's better in that respect. So it's kind of a tough call. It could come down to what they get in return. If they get more for Okafor, and they think Noel would complement Embiid better, that's one thing. And the other thing is Dario Saric. It sounds like there's a good chance he'll come over here with his buyout after his second year in Turkey, and he's a power forward and can handle it a little bit. He's working on his outside shooting. He could theoretically play with any one of those three, whether it's coming off the bench or starting. Probably be better as a first big guy off the bench. But you could bring him in for Noel, for Okafor, or for Embiid, and he could play with any of the other three, depending who's still here or who's healthy. So they even if Embiid's not healthy and they keep Okafor and Noel, you have another guy in that mix, or maybe he could possibly start. You could bring one of those guys off the bench at the 5 or whatever. So they do have some options. It's just a question of who's going to be here and who's going to be healthy.
Sure do. And then you look ahead, the draft is a huge draft for this team. If they don't end up with that 1 or 2, is that a disaster for them?
Well, only thing I would say, I mean, 3 years of tanking, and they're going to win, and they won 18, 19, and let's say this year they win 12 games, which I think 10 to 12 games, whatever it is. That's a lot of losing to end up with the number 3 pick 3 straight years. I mean, unless whoever the number 3 pick is, and I don't think it'll be Ben Simmons, but whoever ends up at number 3 will be a star. That's a lot losing, and patience and things like that to not get the number 1 pick or even the number 2 pick in any of those years. I guess that's how I would put it.
Couple quick things. Stauskas, improving. Do you see something there? What's his NBA role? Is he a guy that's on a team that's a title contender, or does he just doesn't have it? Yeah,
he seems like he really struggles with confidence. He just doesn't. He loses confidence. I think he's probably a fringe NBA player. I mean, I think he's a rotation player on a bad team, but I'm not sure unless he can be more consistent with that shot. And he could be a shooting guard off the bench. he's more. I would say he's more of a borderline guy at this point.
That's been a little disappointing because, he obviously was a guy they hoped, when a bad team could have came in, got his shots, and really got himself in a rhythm. I kind of see it, and I liked him a lot. I wanted them to take him 2 years ago. Let me ask you about Okafor. Do they like each other? Do they get along? I mean, do they want this to work? It doesn't seem like those guys are like, best of friends or anything.
I mean, I think they're okay. I don't think they're mortal enemies.
Not enemies, right. Just not we want this to work because we love playing with each other.
Well, I mean, I think it's part of it might be the reality, Mike, that they know that, hey, that position is the position where I'm best at, and they have tried. I said, I think before on here, Noel is shooting under 30% from outside of 3 feet and out. So, unless he's getting dunks and layups, which he gets a lot of when he's playing the 5, as many as the 4, as when he's at the 4. So then you have Okafor playing away from the basket. He's a little better jump shooter, but he doesn't get double teamed if he's not in the basket area as much, which creates more open shots for the guy he passes it to or the guy that guy passes it to. So I think they're trying, but think of the last 3 games. 2 games ago, Noel missed the second half. Okafor played the second half, and they and did well, and then they. The last 2 games ago, they won with Okafor out and Noel playing, and then they were in the game. I mean, it makes it easier on Brett Brown too because you can play Noel 35 minutes at 5, and then use the Grants and the Rashawn Holmeses and those guys at the 4. It's more of a traditional lineup, and he doesn't have to kind of try to force something that doesn't appear to be working.
A lot to answer down the stretch here, and of course, we're finally almost at the end of the tunnel here. The light at the end of that tunnel is starting to crack as we are about halfway through the NBA season when, things to amp up. And then, of course, the big question will be, Tom, who's in charge? Who's in charge in the offseason, Sam or Jerry?
Yeah, it's a good question. It seems like they're working together with, Colangelo in Phoenix for most of the time. He's been in a couple of times, and, and Hinkie here. It seems like, they're working together, but, you see some of the moves, Colangelo moves so far, Hinkie made significant trades at the deadline. Will Colangelo prefer more stability, or maybe Hinkie prefers more stability at this point, since they're not, teams aren't willing to dump, they don't really need to dump salaries with the salary cap going up so much next year with the new TV contract. It's a whole new world here, kind of. So, I think they're working together. Who has the final say? That's a very good question.
And only time will tell on that one. And we may never know that one here. But Tom Moore, of course, Sixers beat writer, Calkins Media, at T-Moore 76ers for the Sixers tomorrow night against the Warriors. Sold-out crowd in Philadelphia. You can hear the game right here on 97.3. Thanks, Tom.
Take care, Mike. Anytime.
Always good. Tom Moore, of course, the 76ers, a polarizing discussion as always.